Someone cast this stone. Not carved it, cast it. Poured it like concrete into a mold, let it harden, and pulled the mold away. That is the conclusion of 2 peer-reviewed studies published in 2019. And it is the least strange thing about this site. The bronze clamps holding these blocks together contain nickel. Nickel does not exist in Bolivia. The clamps were not brought here. They were cast on site, confirmed by the grain structure of the metal. The site was never finished. The tools, the knowledge, the method, gone. The Inca came 800 years later and never came close to replicating what they found here. 3 problems. None of them have a satisfying answer in the published literature. I am not going to tell you this was built by a lost civilization or visitors from somewhere else. That is the easy answer. It is also the answer that lets you stop thinking. The harder question is what the chemistry actually shows. We are going to follow the nickel, where it could have come from. Why nobody has retested the sample. What the 2 research teams working on this site, independently, in the same year, found when they looked at the same stones and never compared notes. Start with the stone itself. Puma Punku sits on the Bolivian Altiplano at 3,850 meters, roughly the cruising altitude of a small propeller plane. It was built by the Tiwanaku culture around 536 to 600 CE, 800 years before the Inca. The H-blocks are the site's signature feature. Cut from andesite, volcanic rock with a Mohs hardness of 6 to 7, they have interior channels, flanges, and recesses that interlock. For reference, steel tools scratch stone at 5.5. The mainstream answer for how the blocks were shaped? Copper tools with wet sand abrasive. Documented at other Andean sites. Capable of clean cuts in hard stone. That answer holds for the flat surfaces. The geopolymer hypothesis offers one way through that gap. The blocks were cast, not carved. Crushed andesite mixed with an alkali binder, poured into molds, allowed to harden. The 2019 Ceramics International study found carbon and nitrogen inside the H-block andesite. In natural volcanic stone, those elements are not present. The study does not prove casting. It shows a chemical signature that natural stone does not produce. That closes one question. The clamps are a different problem entirely. The clamps are bronze, eye-shaped, cast directly into grooves cut across the stone joints. The metal was poured molten and cooled in place. The grain structure confirms it. If the clamps had been made elsewhere and inserted, the grain structure would look different. They were made on site at 3,850 meters altitude with portable furnaces. What Lechtman's analysis established: approximately 95% copper, 2% arsenic, 1.7% nickel. The arsenic-copper combination is standard Andean bronze. The nickel is not. Nickel does not occur in Bolivia's known ore deposits. The Bolivian Altiplano has copper, tin, silver. Geological surveys of the region do not show nickel in quantities that would enter a smelting operation. Either the material was traded over hundreds of kilometers at minimum, or there is a source that has not been identified. Neither answer is in the record. Both are currently open. That is where the chemistry leaves you. A metal with no local source, cast inside a building that was never completed. Which raises the question the chemistry cannot answer. What stopped them? Puma Punku was not finished. Some blocks fully shaped, some in intermediate stages, some apparently unstarted. The construction stopped mid-sequence. The most commonly cited cause is 536 CE. That year, a sequence of volcanic eruptions injected enough ash into the atmosphere to dim the sun across multiple continents for 18 months. At 3,850 meters, you are already at the edge of what sustains life. The growing season is short. The frost margin is narrow. A single failed harvest does not mean starvation, but 2 or 3 consecutive ones at altitude with no fallback, that is a different calculation entirely. Ice core data from Greenland and Antarctica both record the event. Tree ring data confirms anomalous growth suppression across continents. The construction at Pumapunku did not resume at the same scale. What was being built when it stopped was not rebuilt, and the pattern of what was finished and what was not never mapped against what a casting workflow would predict. The eye-shaped clamp cast in situ is not unique to Pumapunku. The same technique appears at Delphi in the 6th century BCE, at Angkor Wat in the 12th century CE, in Egypt, in Sardinia. The standard position, parallel development in response to a shared engineering problem. What the literature does not address: the alloy composition across those sites. Whether the nickel percentage at Pumapunku is anomalous relative to the others, or whether it appears elsewhere, is not answered. That comparison has not been done. The Inca arrived 800 years later. They built Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, exceptional stonework by any standard. They did not use eye clamps. They did not achieve sub-millimeter interior angles. They were working 100 meters from the greatest precision stonework in the pre-Columbian Americas. And they never learned how it was done. Here is where the two lines of evidence run into each other. The geopolymer studies argue the H-blocks were cast from a manufactured stone material, controlled alkaline chemistry, precise mixing ratios, mold construction capable of holding sub-millimeter geometry while the material cures. The metallurgical evidence shows the bronze clamps were cast on-site at 3,850 meters, portable smelting infrastructure, a reliable fuel source in a near-treeless environment, temperatures above 900 degrees Celsius sustained long enough to work the metal. Both of these are technically demanding operations. The Davidovits studies and the Lechtman analysis both stand in peer-reviewed literature. Neither cites the other. The dating picture has the same quality. Thermoluminescence dating of the sandstone blocks clusters around 536 to 600 CE. Radiocarbon dating of organic material from adjacent stratigraphic layers has returned earlier ranges at some sample points. Both sets of dates are in the published record. The discrepancy has not been resolved. The published work does not attempt to reconcile the two methods. And there is a third data set that has not entered the main literature. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the area around Pumapunku show anomalies beneath the surface. Subsurface features that do not correspond to the known architectural plan. No excavation based on those anomalies has been published. The survey data is in the archive. The knowledge, the chemistry, the metallurgy, the source of the nickel, whatever was still being built when the construction stopped, none of it was passed on. The knowledge trail stops at Pumapunku. What is below has not been opened.